Joe, it's all yours.
Fantastic. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another one of these evening sessions. Those who joined us last week would have been really impressed by someone from Warwick Business School that joined us from their marketing area of courses. This time we've got Warwick back again. We're delighted about, as I've said, WBS, one of the best business schools in the UK. And this time we've got Dr. Angela Lorenz, who's come from the accounting and finance section. Just a few things before we hand over to Angela. First thing is, obviously, if you are looking at continuing with accounting in Malaysia, actually having an accounting degree is actually almost a complete essential. So normally when we're looking at a lot of these degrees, we're looking at transferable skills and looking at the fact that most people go into other areas with their degrees. But this is one area whereby if you are Malaysian and are coming back here to work in accountancy, you actually do need the accountancy degree. So that is something you are thinking about long term. Really do kind of pay a lot of attention to this, because there'll be some details about the course to see if it's the right one for you, because that will dictate quite a lot for you going forward. Okay, as always with us, we've got a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you have any questions at all, please add them to the chat function, and then I can put them to Angela at the end of her presentation. Her presentation will be about half an hour, 40 minutes. And then we'll have that last 20 minutes at the end to do a Q&A with her. So if you have any questions as we're going along, just put them in the chat, and then we'll ask them to Angela at the end of the session. I think Angela will also be asking you a few questions during the session. So this might involve using the electronic hands up, or typing something in the chat, or even, dare I say it, turning on your microphone. I just will pre-warn you that the more you engage with these sessions, the more you get out of them. So hopefully it won't be anything too intrusive for you all, but if you do engage with any of Angela's interactive things, I think you'll get a lot out of the session. So Angela, fantastic to have you here. I'm going to hand over to you now if you want to take over the presentation, and I'll be back to speak to you at the end.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope that you've had a good day so far. So as you've just been told, happy to take any questions that you've got. Post anything you like into the chat window for me. Raise your hand. Ask me any questions when you feel the need to do that. Okay. So just to give you an idea of what I'm going to go through with you this afternoon. So obviously some introductions. We're going to talk about accounting and finance in terms of what a degree in that subject area might look like, what kinds of subjects you might take, and so on. We'll also think about what careers you might go on to after a degree in this area, and I'll tell you a little bit about what our own graduates from Warwick Business School go on to do. And as you were told there, we will have a question and answer session as well. So just to give you some background about myself, so I work at Warwick Business School, where I'm an associate professor in the accounting group, and I'm also the course director for the accounting and finance degree program that we offer there as well. So my background is that I'm an industry accountant. So I qualified with an accounting body that we call CIMA, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants in the UK. And they do have an international presence. So you may see some CIMA offices in your area as well. And my particular subject area is management accounting, predominantly the links between management accounting and businesses strategies, so driving businesses forward. So that's the area that I'm most interested in, and I teach that to undergraduate students and postgraduate students doing master's degrees in accounting, and also our MBA students as well. So I see lots and lots of different types of students while I'm teaching at the university. So moving on, Just to give you a little bit of background about Warwick. So Warwick Business School, we're part of the Russell Group of universities, so top universities in the UK. And this slide tells you a little bit about our core values at Warwick. And these are important because we try and instill these into our different classes, into the different modules. And we think that this gives you a more challenging a way of studying with us, getting you to develop lots and lots of different skills, as well as the technical skills in the subject that you're studying, so that you stand an excellent chance of having those great transferable skills to go on into the world of work and so on afterwards. So you can see here, we like people to be curious. So we want to inspire your curiosity. We want you to be inquisitive. We want you to be restless as well, ask questions, challenge the things that we say sometimes, have debates with us. We also have a very open university, very cosmopolitan. The students in Warwick Business School come from all over the world, so we've got a very diverse cosmopolitan environment there, which is great for encouraging people to embrace lots of different culture and so on. So that tells you a little bit about the business school and what the business school values stand for. And this slide here gives you an overview of the kinds of courses that we deliver. So you can see there, accounting and finance is one of the main degree programs that's on offer at Warwick, as well as the postgraduate courses there. You can see that students take after their undergraduate degrees. So let's talk about what an accounting and finance degree might look like. So if we are thinking about taking an accounting and finance degree, then you can see from this slide that I've got 3 circles there. So most degrees will include a good amount of accounting and finance. The degree that we do at Warwick is called accounting and finance. It has reasonably equal measures of both, gives you exposure to both those key discipline areas in pretty much equal measure. Other degrees may veer more towards the accounting side, so that they will be more accounting degrees with a little bit of finance in them, and other degrees will be finance orientated degrees, so there will be far more finance in them and maybe a little bit of accounting. So when you're looking at different degree programs, they'll vary between those three core elements, if you like. And in terms of what you might study on these degrees, if we start with the accounting side first of all, so from an accounting perspective, one of the big topic areas that you would undertake on your degree program will be around financial accounting. And financial accounting is where we gather information and data and we put it together in a particular way, and it tells us what's happened in the organization in the last 12 months, let's say. So we put together what we call statements of profit and loss, so we can see if the business is profitable or if the business is not profitable, whether it's generating enough profit from its sales, for example. And we also produce other documents as well. So we produce another document that in the olden days we used to call a balance sheet, but we call it a statement of financial position now. And that statement tells us what the business owns. So what assets it's got. Does it have buildings? Does it have cars? Does it have machinery? Does it have inventory, for example? And it also tells us where the money came from for the business to buy those assets. So it tells us what's going on in the organization. So we've got the financial statements, and with all financial statements, they need to be approved, and they need to be, particularly if it's a company, the company will need a firm of accountants to look at its accounts, look at its documents, and assure, so what we call an audit, tells the organization that they've produced things in the proper manner. So we have international financial reporting standards, and we teach you all about those in financial accounting, so that you can make sure that when you're putting financial statements together, then you're using the appropriate financial standards and so on. So financial accounting puts those kinds of key documents for organizations together. So if you ever look at an annual report or accounts for an organization, so if you Google any organization, any company, and look for their annual reports and accounts, you'll see these financial statements are a big part of those annual reports. Predominantly, the financial accounting is for use with external parties, so they have to be produced for external use. But we've another branch of accounting, and that's the branch that my work is attached to, which is management accounting. And management accounting is more about helping people internally within the organization. So again, it's all about gathering data and information, and majority of that may be financial and quantitative data, but it's putting that information together to help the managers in the business do different things. So people need to plan what's going to happen next, so we can help to put the plans together. We want to make sure that we make the right decisions, so those might be short-term decisions, so we help put data together to see whether the short-term decisions are appropriate. We might be thinking about longer-term decisions, so we might be thinking about buying new plant and equipment, or opening a new store, and we want to evaluate that from a financial perspective. So management accountants do those kinds of things within organizations. And also we want to make sure that we are capable of doing the things we plan to do, so we have an element of control there. So we evaluate performance, we look at control, we look for where things deviate from our plans and what we can do to keep the organization back on track. So when you study an accounting and finance degree, you will definitely come across a number of financial accounting modules and a number of management accounting modules, increasing your knowledge and your depth of understanding in these subject areas as you move through a program. From a finance perspective, you'll definitely come across corporate finance. So linking to the financial accounting in particular, we said on the statement of financial position where the money came from. So what we think about here is, how does a company raise the funds that it needs to buy assets, to buy inventory, to grow the business. So we look at corporate finance, and we look at the relationships between borrowing money from banks or other sources, and also raising money from the shareholders in the business. So corporate finance looks mainly at those core areas, and thinking about the key finance operations of an organization from that perspective. So you'll see a lot of corporate finance in accounting and finance degree programs. Another area that you will definitely come across is investment management. Not that companies don't use investment management, but also thinking about individuals as well here. So what kinds of investments individuals as well as organizations might make. So maybe it's shares, putting portfolios of shares together and things like that. So two core areas there that you would definitely come across from a finance perspective. But any degree that you take that's orientated around accounting and finance doesn't stand in a vacuum on its own. It's all about the interaction with the world around us. So you need to be able to think about the context that you use these different accounting and finance tools. So you do a number of other subject areas to really deliver that context around what you're doing. So I've just got a couple of examples here on my slide. Law is really important from an accounting perspective, we've got different, in the UK, we've got the Companies Act, for example. So we've got law that tells us what we should do or shouldn't do. We've got international reporting standards, as we said earlier on. From a finance perspective, we've got finance legislation and so on that we need to think about, and the key areas there in terms of legalities. So law is a very important subject for accounting students to study predominantly. And as we start to look at lots and lots of different pieces of information, we need some good mathematical, statistical and analytical skills, particularly from a finance perspective. So our finance modules really do interact a lot with our ability to deal with analytics and statistics. So that's a very big area that's important on these kinds of degrees as well. But in order to get the perspective as well, we look at other discipline areas. So there's one that's not on my screen there, but an absolute must is always economics. So we need to understand the economics of the firm, the economics of the economy and so on as well, to see where all of this fits together. So that gives us an overview of what an accounting and finance degree would generally cover in its entirety. This next slide is what we currently deliver on our BSc Accounting and Finance. So I'm not wanting to look at this in too much detail right now. But again, just so that you can see those core areas being picked out. In the first year, for example, over on the left-hand side, you can see there we've got a financial management, so introduction to that corporate finance that we mentioned earlier, management accounting, financial accounting, statistics, analytics, economics. And then moving through the years, we have more detailed financial accounting and management accounting modules. And what you might also see there that runs along the top line of this diagram are a number of modules that are labelled core. And that links to the slide I showed you earlier about the core skills that we develop in our students. And these modules are more holistic. All our students in the business school do them, and they generate the ability to use those skills, develop that critical thinking, that inquisitiveness, looking at a variety of different approaches, new topics and things like that come along. So maybe looking at artificial intelligence, for example, in one of those modules and the way it interacts with the business environment. So lots of different elements there coming into that. And this slide then, you might have noticed that at the final level, there's quite a lot of choice. So again, the ability to specialize. So on this slide, you can see lots more accounting modules. So you can specialize, you can take auditing, you can take taxation, you could take some more law. And then there's quite a lot of finance modules there. So derivatives, a new module this year that we've introduced called FinTech, looking at the technology aspects and the new technology in the financial markets and so on. International financial management is another one there. So lots and lots of different choice to develop your different skills as you move through a degree program. So that's pretty much an overview of the kinds of degrees that we've got. And just to give you some sort of insight into what that interacts with, I guess. So when we look at all of these subjects, we sometimes think of them in isolation, but when we come to an organisation, one area that an organisation may really need some interaction from its accounting and finance teams is in developing an idea of the risks that the organization is exposed to. So most large organizations now really do focus on their risk and what kinds of risk they have. And you can see from this slide here, there are three main components to that idea of risk. So we've got financial risk, operational risk, and compliance risk. And when we talk about business risk, we tend to think about, well, what is it that could influence the organization? What could change what the organization is able to do? So we think about the objectives of the organization. What is the organization trying to achieve? And at this point, I guess I might ask you a question. If you were thinking about a profit-making business organization, what's the main objective, do you think, of that organization? So if I said, do you think it's to make lots of profit, would you give me a tick, for a yes tick for that, do you think? Do you want to put a tick in the box or a cross? So what's your objective, do you think, if you're an organization? Are you trying to make profit or not? Yeah, trying to make a profit. Profit's often the main objective that we see in organizations. So everybody, lots of students say to me, oh yeah, it's all about making profit, Angela. And profit's important. It's not the only objective that businesses have. It's an important one. So we want to make sure that we can continue to make a profit. We want to make sure we continue to stay in business. We call that, in accounting terms, a going concern. We want to stay in business. We also, maybe we want to satisfy our stakeholders, like our shareholders who put money into the business, or we want to make sure that we are secure for our debt providers as well. So from a risk perspective, we want to make sure we can achieve our objectives, but sometimes events and conditions or action circumstances get in the way of that. So what business risk is about is trying to say, well, if these things could happen, does it make our situation really difficult? Would our business be in danger if some of these things happened? And you might, if I say to you, what event is currently going on right now that might be something that a lot of organizations have had to factor into their risk? So lots of organizations are revisiting their risk right now because of an event that's happening around the world. So anybody, you can type in the chat window or raise your hand and tell me if you'd like. I'll give you a second to have a think about it. So something that's going on right now. No, I've got nothing in my chat yet. No problem. So what about this global COVID pandemic that we're in? Yes. So I think that qualifies as an event that may well mean that an organization's not able to achieve its core objectives. Yeah. Okay. And as I say, we think about these in three areas. So we've already talked about financial accounting and finance, and these two areas, we brought them together to think about the financial risks that we might have. So we might think about the risk of not being able to generate our sales. We might think about the risk of not having enough profit. But one of the things you can see on the screen there is cash flow, and cash flow is vital to the business. So we can continue to trade, we can continue to move forward without making a profit, but we can't move forward if we don't have cash. So an organization will evaluate some of its financial risks in terms of looking at how much cash it's got. And that information comes from our accounting information. The amount of money that the organization borrows from other sources is also a source of financial risk. So the more money that an organization borrows, sometimes the more risky that organization becomes, because it has to repay those debts to those people. So it's far less risky but possibly more expensive to raise money by using your shareholders rather than debt providers. So we look at those kind of financial risks. And we might think about where we trade. So if we trade with lots of countries globally, we'll have foreign exchange transactions, and that opens up some financial risks for the company. So there's lots of different ways in which looking at our financial statements, drawing on our finance skills, allows us to evaluate and put forward the core areas where financial risk might be. From a management accounting perspective, we will also help to put together the operational risks. So here we're thinking about the bigger picture, so economics comes into this as well, and strategy. So we might be thinking about our suppliers. Where do our suppliers get how good are our suppliers at supplying us with goods? How good is our relationship with them? Where are they located? We might think about our competition. Who else is in the market? Are we going to lose market share to somebody else? What effect might that have? Are we able to keep up with new product developments? Are we able to stay ahead of other people in the market? What kind of customers do we have? Are they loyal to us? So lots of different elements there from the wider environment, but inside the organization, we might be thinking about the processes and systems we have. So is the factory production system still capable of delivering what we need? So is there a risk there that our equipment is perhaps coming outdated? And we talked about the legal areas earlier on. So organizations have to comply with legislation and laws, and new legislation and laws appear all the time. So lots more environmental things now that organizations are being asked to report on, for example. So we need to make sure we comply with those core areas. So what this does, I guess, is it gives you an idea of something that organizations really need to concentrate on very, very much, and how much of that is linked to what you would learn in an accounting and finance, from an accounting and finance degree and perspective. Okay. So just thinking about the kinds of things that you might do as well as study the discipline on a degree program. So this slide shows you the different work experience opportunities that we have for students at Warwick. So we have an amazing in-house in our business school, so separate from the main university, but in our business school we have a careers centre, and they're absolutely amazing, the work that they do and the links that they have with so many employers, and that liaison with employers. So before COVID stopped us working face to face, we had lots of employers coming into the university for different fairs, and those fairs might be for graduate employment for people after they finish their degree. They were also for students who wanted to take a year's placement or even a short internship. So from a short internship perspective, lots and lots of Warwick students take these short periods of work experience. So the students at Warwick think work experience is really valuable to them in helping to develop their careers. So these short internships might be over holiday periods, and lots of employers advertise their internship opportunities with us, and we offer support to our students in the Careers Centre. So we help with CVs, letter writing, interview techniques, particularly the video interview, which we're finding is really popular with organizations now, the testing and things like that. So lots of work in our career centre to help support our students. But students can also take a whole year of work experience, and that becomes a formal part of their degree then. So at Warwick, it's an optional work placement, so students can opt in and say, actually I would like to do a year in industry, and you do that year between your second year and your final year. Other universities have the work experience as a compulsory part of their degree programme. So different universities have a different approach to that. And we offer a couple of different ways of doing work experience. Our university partnership programme is in conjunction with the professional body that we call the ICAEW, which is the Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. Okay, and we do that that program with them, and while students are on that program, they work for an organization, and they could start their training contract at the same time. So that's a good opportunity. Other students want to do a more broad work placement. Again, our careers centre gets lots of adverts for jobs, and it fields those adverts to our students. It doesn't provide placements for the students, but it helps provide the setting for students to search for their jobs. And those placements could be anywhere in the world. In any business discipline, it says related to accounting and finance, that's broadly related to accounting and finance. Degrees that we offer on our programs at Warwick. Okay, so work experience, good way of getting lots of additional skills, finding out what kind of area you might want to work in, and so on. And I also mentioned the professional bodies. So in the UK, these are the main professional bodies that we have. And I know that ICAEW and ACCA, and probably to a slightly lesser extent CIMA, are very global qualifications. Lots of people studying with those professional bodies all around the world. And I know also in the area around Malaysia, you might also be familiar with CPA Australia as well. Yeah, and we've also got a link in the chat window here, thank you for that, for the Malaysian Institute of Accountants as well. So lots of professional bodies, and with degrees in the UK in particular, usually because we teach a lot of technical content, which is similar to that of professional bodies, there is the opportunity potentially for some exemptions, although employers don't always allow you to take exemptions when you start to work for them. So we have good links with the professional bodies as well. So where do our students go to? So what kinds of organizations do they go to? Well, you can see a large number of different organizations on this list here, but if we reorganize them, then we can see that we've got professional practice over here. So we can see on the screen there the Big Four. Many of our students go to work for the Big Four, and they get their training contracts, and they qualify after their degree programs as chartered accountants with ICAEW, or maybe they work with ACCA as well. And looking at our student body that comes from Malaysia, lots of our Malaysian students take jobs with these Big Four as well. Some of them around the world, but definitely some of them back in Kuala Lumpur, for example. All of these big organizations have offices and so on there as well. We've also got banking. So you can see there that we've got some of the main high street banks that we have, and also some investment banks there. So there's lots of opportunities in banking and investment from the degree. And again, looking at the background of the students who graduate from Malaysia from our degree program, they also went on to banks such as the Hong Leong Bank and the Khazanah National, which I know that you're familiar with in Malaysia. So lots of different banking opportunities, lots of different industry opportunities as well. So again, just some examples of organizations that our students have gone on to from an industry perspective. And in terms of an industry perspective, that could be working in financial accounting terms, it could be working in management accounting terms, it could be the finance, it could be the treasury department, for example, of an organization. And again, locally in Malaysia, so our students have gone back to work at companies like Petronas, for example, as well. And also we have consultancy, oops, gone too far. So a couple of consultancy ones there, but also again, in Malaysia, our students have got recent graduates who've gone to Accenture and also the Boston Consulting Group as well, to work in a consultancy field. So there's lots of opportunity for different job fields. So erring towards accounting, erring towards banking, working in industry, working in consultancy, advising organizations. So lots of different job opportunities there. But one of the things that I was asked to talk about today, just before I finish, is what is the future? So if you choose to take an accounting and finance degree now, what's the kind of future going to be like for you? And one of the things that I often get asked is, do I think that accountants will be replaced by robots? Okay, so that might be a question that you've had before. And I guess my answer is no, I don't think that's going to happen. However, we have seen a substantial increase in the amount of artificial intelligence and robotic learning and so on. And what that does is it means that the very routine jobs that accountants would normally do, so the gathering of the data, the compiling of the data, that can be done much more easily by the artificial intelligence and the machine learning that we have. And that's great for us, because what it means is, as accountants, we can move on and we can do more in terms of analyzing and interpreting and informing management and changing the direction or the decisions, are adding to the decision making in management for the organization. So it maybe gives the accountants an opportunity to excel in other areas. And I guess that might also mean that accountants need more skills. So the article at the bottom here, which you can go to from the link there, is a really interesting one, talking about trends. So looking right now, 2021, what are the trends? Where might things be going? So just picked out a couple of those just before we finish. So there's the emerging markets. So a lot of finance jobs orientated around the main markets. So there'd be lots of jobs in London or New York or Tokyo. But as the markets are developing, there's more and more jobs around the emerging markets. So lots of opportunity to be more geographically diverse and engage in those areas in finance. Technology is a really important one we've just mentioned. So we're thinking about how we integrate the technology into the accounting functions. So what we call robotic automation processes in accounting. We're also thinking about the use of the technology in finance. So things I'm sure that terms you're familiar with already. We're exploring things like blockchain and how that can be used. We're looking at big data, how we manage big data, how we use it, how we get the best from that kind of data. And again, what we're well structured for in Warwick, with our diverse culture and students from all over the world, is that ability to understand global culture and think about things from a global perspective. The last one on my list there is sustainability. So that's becoming more and more prevalent. It forms an underpinning part of our degree programs at Warwick and I'm sure elsewhere. And at Warwick, we are continuously developing new modules to support these different areas. So the business analytics module, we've made sure we have, so that we can start to develop student skills in this area. We've got a fintech module in our final year. We're currently preparing some new sustainability, a sustainability and accounting module, and a sustainable investments module from a finance perspective as well. So those core areas are feeding into that. So that's the kind of future, I guess, in terms of where we're going. An interesting question in the chat there: how important is ethics? So that's a good question, because one of the things that's currently shaping, or has been shaping, what we do, particularly in practice, is around ethics and understanding those corporate governance failures in organizations. So corporate governance forms part of the law elements, and also our financial reporting, and also from and again, ethics, not just in accountancy, but ethics in finance. So the new sustainable investment module that we're looking at here will include that element of ethics as well. So all of the professional bodies are looking for people to have the code of ethics as well. So we link quite closely with making sure that we have those core areas. So that I guess brings me to the end of the things I wanted to talk to you about here. So I can see one more question in the chat there. Are there different skills used by professional practice versus investment banking? Is one more maths based? Yeah, being an accountant myself, professional practice, you are using different skills there. You're predominantly using your skills of understanding financial statements, putting that information together, interpreting and auditing organizations. Obviously there's maths in accounting based subjects, but I guess the maths in accounting is more mainstream maths, because we're just, what we're trying to do in accounting is interpret the math information, the financial data. In banking and in finance, the maths is more important. There's a lot more statistical work there, a lot more underpinning in terms of mathematical calculations. So definitely more maths required for the finance side of what we teach, definitely. Okay.
Thanks, Angela. That's fantastic. And thanks for starting us off on the questions. Got a bit more time, not that long now for questions. We've got a little bit of extra time. So if anyone wants to ask anything additionally of Angela, just add it to the chat. I suppose there's a slight extension to the question of ethics and that world of things, Angela. I suppose I'd say to you, I mean, perhaps one of the common terms that is used when people describe accountancy at a certain level is creative accountancy. Where would you say that? Obviously, that also means being very good at accountancy as well in many ways. But it also perhaps means pushing the envelope of what you should and shouldn't be doing. And there's an interesting debate that goes on that's both legal and moral into that argument. What's your, how does the training sort of help students with that? And what's your kind of opinion of where the lines are drawn on those things?
Yeah, I mean, that it's a difficult thing to draw a line, I guess, in terms of what's allowable, what's not allowable, and so on. I mean, from a financial accounting perspective, we are striving both from a university perspective and the professional bodies perspective. We've got our international financial reporting standards. The majority of the world uses those international financial reporting standards. On the whole, they go through a very rigorous process, so I think they are quite robust. But there's always, as you say, the creative nature. There's always grey areas everywhere, and it's whether those grey areas should be there, whether they could be exploited, how we narrow maybe those grey areas that are there. So from a financial accounting perspective, it's all about understanding those rules and regulations, interpreting them correctly, and then I guess we do rely on the ethical element in terms of understand what's allowable, what's not. In in many ways, the audit profession is there as the kind of watchdog to make sure that people are interpreting the rules and regulations in the right way. But we know from the different scandals that we've had over the past sort of 10, 15 years, that doesn't always stop the creative accounting from being in place.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think it's quite an interesting area, really, isn't it? I think all people going into that profession, particularly if you're in private practice, there's always that, you know, you regulating yourself is going to be quite a key point.
Absolutely.
Of the work that you do. And on a similar thing there, we've got some additional questions popping up in the chat, coming from various people and from Ruth and Shazza as well. Looking at corporate social responsibility strategy. Again, how do accountants fit into that? So this is more within a larger corporate structure where, you know, how do they fit in there? Is that something that's quite important for an accountant to understand?
It is. I mean, we definitely teach corporate social responsibility. We push key areas there. So new developments as they arise. I mean, they're not the problem, I guess, with accounting a lot of the time is that we suggest things that organizations should do, but we don't rigidly say this is a rule based, you must do this or that.
Guideline.
So it's a tricky line for organizations to decide how much effort to put into corporate social responsibility. And a lot of the information that goes into corporate social responsibility reporting comes from the accountants. So the information is pulled by the accountants, it's evaluated by the accountants and put into the statements. But we don't always have absolute guidance on what must or must not be in there. My colleague who teaches the advanced financial reporting, she gets people from the International Financial Reporting Council to talk to the students about what developments there are, what should be in the accounts and so on. And another area that in particular she looks at is integrated reporting. So that combination, pulling the financial data with the corporate social responsibility, with the environmental, and so on, pulling those things together into an integrated report. So and the movement, so she has people come in to talk about the movement forward and whether it really benefits the organizations and how it benefits them to do that. Some organizations will want to do this because they think, you can think of it maybe as a PR exercise, I guess, from that perspective. We want our customers are concerned about these things, our clients and so on, the wider population. So we need to show them that we are socially responsible and so on. So many organizations are doing this, sometimes for themselves, sometimes because they want to show this, but also because they need to show the wider stakeholders what they're doing. It's a reputational element, I guess.
Excellent. Again, that mixture of individual corporate responsibility and where it lies, really interesting area, I think, of this debate. Just saying, so we've got perhaps a couple of more course-related things now, really. So going back perhaps more to your particular students. And obviously, you know, you made a good deal of these excellent internships that you had, but some of those really competitive sounding ones, so something like Goldman Sachs or UBS, are they really difficult to get into? I mean, do you have quite a finite amount of these placements that are available for students, or are you finding most students are finding similar level placements that they get onto?
It's a tricky one to answer. I think, you know, there are definitely some organizations which are very coveted by students. Goldman Sachs is a very good example, I think, in the banking sector. Lots of our accounting and finance students who want to go into investment banking have their eye on those kinds of organizations. The relationship that these organizations have with our careers service, you know, it's an ongoing relationship, and the good thing, I guess, that we find with Warwick is because the caliber of our students is high, they go out and they work in these organisations. The organisations see the caliber of our graduates or our undergraduates if they're doing an internship with them. They see the caliber of our students, and these employers come back to look for more Warwick students. So we don't have a finite number of places. The different organisations will know how many internships they want to have, how many graduate roles they want in a particular year. But, you know, what we do find at Warwick is they do look for those students from Warwick rather than, you know, in that respect. So there's a good relationship there. So the better quality candidates we send out, the more likelihood there is that they'll continue to recruit from Warwick. So yeah, but good, yeah. You know, the competition will be high for certain placements. And again, as I said earlier, our careers team, they are absolutely amazing. So the amount of work that they put in with students. So if you need to bring your best, you put your best effort to get that, secure that position, they will work with you, mock interviews, you know.
I mean, Angela, I can ask you, is it, I think this is a very student question. It's quite a parent question, actually, I think probably, but is there anything that, the student that gets those kinds of placements, what is it that they're doing that the other students aren't? I suppose that's the key thing. What is it about their profile or their attitude at interview or whatever it is that's getting them those positions?
I mean, I couldn't say for sure. I think that a lot of our students at Warwick are very highly motivated. So there's a lot of drive and motivation to succeed. That idea that I said earlier on about curiosity and restlessness, they're prepared to go out of their way to do research. They'll find out more about organisations, so they really know the detail of the organisations before they get anywhere near the interview stage. And again, it's that element of preparation. You know, it's always good to seek out that help and support from our careers team. They're the experts in what employers are looking for, the way that the key skills to point out in particular circumstances. And you know, our student population, I know when I do open events with our student ambassadors, they are, you know, they are saying, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for the amazing support that the career service give us to help us with those internships. So I think it's the case of those students who are prepared to be motivated and go that extra mile, secure those placements. And there's lots of very.
It's worth saying, it was a bit of extra promotion. The Warwick regularly have some of the best graduate recruitment rates and have done for a good few years. So the percentage of people coming out, particularly out of WBS, into direct employment is very high. Much higher than the national average in the UK. So I just again, as something that's course based here, which is just obviously with British degrees anyway, obviously they're quite heavily structured, obviously a lot of core modules you need to do. But what are you finding with your students are the most popular electives, where there are electives available on given years? What are you finding your students most commonly like to take up additionally to the core accountancy and finance modules?
I mean, most of the electives where there's quite a lot of free choices in our final year, where we allow the students to, you know, pick things they think are interesting or specialise in certain areas. Lots of students pick finance modules. So international financial management is a very popular one. The fintech one that we've just introduced, we think is going to be really popular. It's popular with students this year. I guess it kind of depends on the path that people want to take. So quite a lot of students take advanced financial reporting and auditing, for example, if they want to go into that field. So they think that they'd be interested to take a module in those areas to get that initial feel for those subject areas, I guess. So yeah, so probably a couple of the key finance ones, and again, you know, the more advanced level financial ones as well would be the main ones that are taken. I get quite a lot of students on my advanced management accounting module too.
That's just down to you. Sorry. I normally coming to the end now. Normally, I would end actually by asking a lot of those questions about the future, and obviously we pre-briefed you, and you added it a really good section to the presentation on it. Obviously, I'm very keen to see a sort of war between accountants and robots. I think that from where I'm sitting would be an interesting thing to witness. I thought I'd just pick you up on one or two of the areas that you mentioned in that. So I think these are things that we often discuss with the students, again, cutting across a range of industries. But one that comes up a lot is the blockchain stuff. Are you able to expand on that a bit? What that actually means specifically for accountancy and finance, and what would students be looking at in terms of learning and in terms of the industry going forward?
Yeah, blockchain is something that we're just gradually picking up on now in terms of the education, if you like, how it influences the education. It's predominantly useful from a finance perspective. So I'm not a finance expert. My colleague, I can take some questions away on that and bring some answers back. You know, the way that we are starting to develop things is thinking about how this AI, or the whole area of AI, not just the blockchain, affects the profession and so on, and affects the way that we work. So in my advanced management accounting module, I had a consultant who was an accounting graduate, not from Warwick, alas, but an accounting graduate who works for IBM, and she came in and spoke to the students about what they do and how they consult and help organizations develop these key areas. And so we're starting to put them into modules and say, oh, well, what do you think the effect of this? So I'm talking to my management accounting students from an organizational perspective and saying, what do you think the effect of this is going to be on what we do? How is that going to change what we do? So we're definitely bringing a lot more of that into our syllabi, if you like. Now we're introducing the you know, the more interesting features of those key elements. And I'm always learning stuff about blockchain. I was on a course a little while back where they were showing us how they use blockchain on fruit coming from overseas into the, you know, and tracking the shipping. So it's a really interesting area to think about, particularly from an accounting perspective.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. This is an outline of just one of the various areas that are going to be advanced upon over the next few years. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming. I hope you enjoyed meeting us and doing your presentation today.
Absolutely, it's been great. And any questions, if any of the students think of any questions afterwards, something they want to ask, either about the degree program or accounting in general. As I say, I'm not a finance expert myself, but I've got colleagues who are, and my deputy course director, more than happy to answer any questions about finance related areas as well. So anything you think of, I think my email address was on the slides, but I'm sure you'll pass that out to the students as well.
Yeah, we've got that. So we've got the email there of Imran, who's your local rep, Singapore-based rep out here, and he'll be able to, he was online with us last week, so he'll be able to answer anything directly. And just to say, just to thank you, and then Angela's has gone into the chat as well. You can see her email address there. And obviously, just a reminder that Ms. Shazza also put in those details about local accountancy qualifications, obviously post-degree qualifications ordinarily. So yeah, obviously if you are Malaysian or thinking of working in accountancy in Malaysia, then do check out those as well. That'll be an extra bit of extension research for you all to do on this. Okay, thank you all for joining us. As always, if you want, we'll all just stay on the line, Angela, myself, Ms. Shaz and Ms. Ruth, we'll all just stay on the line. If any of you want to ask a question, you can. If not, we'd just like to say good evening and thank you for joining us. Hope you can come next week.